be back to our Saturday review. Last week I wasn't around, and 2 weeks ago I think it was the training class for you guys, so that's why we had the week off from 2 weeks ago. So the last time we met was actually 3 weeks ago. And looking back at what happened for the past 2 weeks, or the 3 weeks that we weren't online to chat or talk, really gave me a lot to think about. And the reason is because time really flew by. I mean, I still remember I think it was March, the beginning of March, where we had our sharing. And since then, many things had changed. If you guys have been following the assembly, the morning assembly, volunteer assembly, you would know that starting from 2 weeks ago, Master would only host the Monday and Tuesday, the morning assembly of Mondays and Tuesdays. And the remaining 5 days were divided up by our masters of the abode, the Shifu, and also Qingxiu Shi on Sundays. And so it had been a very, very giant leaps to try to shoulder the burden. And I remember it was 2 weeks ago when you guys had the orientation, or you guys had the training class. That morning, that Saturday morning, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, that Saturday morning, the morning sermon by the master, she lamented and she talked about how if we all are learning and if we all cherish all the Dharma, and she even lamented on how even if we are mindful, are we really learning enough? Are we picking at a pace that is fast enough? And I remember that day, the moment that she said that, and I felt really, really sad. I wasn't sure why, but I saw how slowly she walked at the end of the Xun Fa Xiang, and I just thought to myself, I've got to go tell Master how wonderful this is and how effective and how helpful it has been to me. So I did. After breakfast, she was walking very slowly, gingerly, and I went up to her and I said, Master, I understand what you said this morning. You're very worried about us, and we are doing everything we can. We're going to change our, we're going to cultivate, essentially. And she didn't say a word throughout the whole trip. And then later on found out that she had been feeling really, really ill since the night before. And that had made her wanted to say the things that she did, which was that she was, I think she was hurried for time. Any moment that her health dips down, then she will begin to be pressed for time and wanting to do more and wondering why we haven't caught up. So she didn't say anything, except at the end, I found out that Master was supposed to host the volunteer assembly that morning, and she was feeling so not ready and ill that she had given that stood next to me. Master reminded that day was special because there were doctors around. And so Shifu looked at me and said, well, what about let Joe do it? And Master nodded and asked me if I can do it. And I said I had to catch a train, which I really didn't. I haven't even gotten my train ticket yet. And she asked me, well, what time is your train? And I looked at her. I knew I had I didn't have time. I mean, I didn't have any time constraint. I just put it up there because I was afraid. And so she said, well, what time was your train? I said, well, don't worry about that. Well, I'm going to work it out with Sifu to make sure somebody hosts the volunteer assembly. So at the end, I did. It was me that hosted. Within about 10 minutes, I ran back and I shaved and I changed and I got on without knowing what I was going to talk about. And I talked about the Lotus Sutra of that day, the Xun Fa Xiang for that day. And then the next week, it was also my schedule turn to host the assembly on Sundays. And it really makes me feel that without doing it yourself, you really don't know how much pressure that just doing what it seems to be normal and everyday work for a master. It seems so trivial. It seems so like every day. Yeah, it just walks up there, talks for about 70 or 60 minutes, and that's all. But if you've never done it before, and that's just me, okay? I don't prepare meticulously. Master does. So you can imagine how much pressure, and that goes on for day in and day out and every single day. So without doing it, you really wouldn't understand how much effort she had to put in to make it happen for us. And for that, I just wanted to share that with you so that I know you all already cherish it, but I think sometimes we just need to know more so that we can cherish it a little bit more when we're feeling a little bit lacking, or when we're feeling a little bit not so inspired. Then we need to know this to pick ourselves up to continue. So let us continue with our Lotus review today. And let's move on to page 2. So last week, thanks to Brother Yoping, it talks about chapter 17, the distinct merits and virtues. There's some key aspect. Essentially, the key aspect of this chapter has been about that there are many, many, many levels of cultivation, and there are many, many steps. Whether it's the 10 steps of Bodhisattva, or it was 52. However, the number, all we need to know is that so far we are not there yet, and we need to continue. Even if you feel that you are at the top of the world already, there's always something that we could do more. There's always something that we could do more. And I shared this story last week, just like in Cape Town, South Africa. We probably know from the story that from the news that Cape Town in South Africa is actually the second most populous city in the country of South Africa. And it's a very, very hot, it's a very, very well-known and renowned tourist destination for many, many people in the world. And for 3 years now, it has been going through a serious, severe drought. So that starting in April of this year, estimated in April this year, they are going to run out of water for a city of over millions of people. When the water runs out, it means it's going to be chaos. It's going to be horrible. And we used this example because just shortly, 3 years ago, back in 2014, this particular country was ranked number 1 in the world in terms of the management of its water resource. And that tells you that even when you're at the top of the world, even if you're performing recognized by the world community on how you manage your water resource, just in short 3 years of severe drought, you could be at the top of water management all the way down to the bottom of having no water. And that is just a very short, brief period of 3 years. And so that was some of the very key important ideas is you don't stop. Even if you are achieved so high in terms of understanding and Buddhahood, in terms of Bodhisattva, you do not stop. You continue to go on because there's always something that we have to learn. There's always something that we have to understand. So that's the key aspect of the distinct merits and virtues. So this week we're going to talk about the 5 parameters. And this is the one thing that has been circulating in the past week, the importance of wisdom. And we're going to cut into some of the stories that we hear this week and also try to pick out some of the essence, the important parts of the story. So let's move in. So the first thing is we're going to talk about the 5 parameters and also the wisdom. Essentially because this is actually the 6th parameter. And we're only going to be talking about, but recently, the chapter told us, the chapter and also master share with us the importance of wisdom itself in the entire 6 parameters. So a brief review of the 6 parameters on page 5. So the first one is generosity and giving. So this is more like charity, giving, the act of giving. And the second parameter is discipline and precept, meaning that you have to uphold the concepts of precept, so that there are things that you should not do and there are rules that you should follow, and we should hold our actions in line with those disciplines. The third is forbearance and tolerance. And this is the one thing that we probably have heard a lot about and know a lot about, because that's the one thing that we always have to practice, to tolerate, to be able to continue to forbear through some of the difficulties. And the fourth is diligence and effort, to continue to work hard on the path. And the fifth is samadhi and equanimity. This is more like a state of mind where you are at peace. You are at ease with all the things around you and all the things that you do. And therefore you are able to reach, you're able to think calmly and contemplate. And the sixth is wisdom and insight. So the 6 parameters, the word means actually it's to cross, to reach the other shore. So the 6 parameters is always what we talk about when we're cultivating spiritual practicing as a bodhisattva. These are the 6 tools that we had to do, that we had to use to continuously go into the people, to work with people, to try to earn and get that wisdom and earn that experience and earn that affinity with sentient beings. So that's the 6. However, recently in this chapter, we talk about how there are practices of the first 5 parameters without the 6, and how important that wisdom is in terms of the 6 parameters, and how the merit goes about. If you don't have the 6 wisdom, then the previous 5 added up will not even be equate to tens of thousands, of the wisdom of the wisdom merit that you would otherwise get. So why is wisdom so important? On page 6, why is it so important? What is wisdom? What is wisdom out of all these 6? And I think there are some ideas that Master shared with us. Wisdom, essentially, it's about the ability to self-reflect, to contemplate. And also, Master says that because we have the wisdom, we can perpetuate the effort. Understandably, to do all 6 or to do all 5, it isn't so difficult. However, to do it always, it will be very difficult. But what I found is that the hardest part, it's not the doing. The hardest part, it's actually to know when and what to do. So for example, when we're dealing with people, out of the first 5 parameters, there are always time for giving. You can always give, and you can always think about upholding a precept. You can always think about forbearance. You can always think about diligence, and you can always think about samadhi. These are the first 5, okay, the first 5. However, when should you do the right thing? What is the right thing? And when is the right time? That's the hardest part. It's almost like we have all the tools in the world. We have all the tools in the world that we can use. But when do you use them? How do you use them? Where do you use it on? That's the key question. If you look at 6, the number 6, something that's associated with 6 is our roots. Okay, so the eye, our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, and our thoughts, our mind. Imagine the tools or the sensory organs that we have, the sense of touch, the smell, the sight, the taste, the sound, all of those are tools. When should you use your eyes to see, When should you use your ears to hear? When should you say something? When should you do something? The determination of all of those is wisdom. So that's how important wisdom is. It tells you what you should do at the right time. You can imagine when somebody is very, very hurt, and we do that all the time as Tzu Chi volunteers. We go to the disaster site, and we go to try to help them. Sometimes the wisdom will tell us all we need to do is put our arms around the people that are hurt, and that's it. Don't say a word. Don't go on explaining Dharma. Don't explain karma and said, yeah, you're getting it because you deserve it. No, don't say that. But those words, those are not wrong words. Those are the right words, but it's not the right time to say it. All we need at the time was to put our arms around her or him and say, it's okay, and just be there. So wisdom help us determine when is the right time to do the right action. When is it time to be giving? When is it time to uphold precept and say, you know what, at this time, I shall say no word. I shall hold my tongue and say no words. Or this is the time to be very, very active because I want to be diligent and put in all my effort. Or this is the time to say, you know what, let me think about this. Let me contemplate a little bit before I dive myself in and say, you know, give me another 120% of my effort. So the first 5 of the 6 parameters are tools. And the last one determines when I should use this. So in a room that is completely crowded, when after the earthquake happened in Hualien, at a place that is completely crowded, I remember on the morning of on the late evening of February 6th, when the earthquake happened, on the very, very, about 1 hour or 2 hours after the earthquake happened, Master came out of her studies. She saw all of us running around, busy with phones in our hand, talking over each other, not enough people taking notes, not enough people trying to put all the effort together. She sat down and she wanted us to calm down. She wanted us to practice samadhi. She wanted us to sit down and listen. We didn't. We continued working because all the things were important. The phones I cannot put down because it's important. So she got angry with us. And she said, I've been sitting here and I've been looking at you all walking around headlessly, without head, without purpose. When are you going to sit down and listen to me talk? And finally, we all sat down. So at that time, it wasn't the right practice to put in all the diligent effort. At that time, it wasn't the right practice to be giving and say, you know what, you have my ears. Go ahead and talk. I'm on the phone. At that time, it was time to practice samadhi. It was time to practice contemplation, to know, to calm down, to know what we are missing. So wisdom is just that. Allow us to pick the right tool to use. And furthermore, it perpetuates the effort because there will always be problems. Even if you know the right tools to pick, there are going to be challenges. There are going to be obstacles for us to get through. For us to get through. And wisdom is once again there to help us get over that obstacle. And Master talks about in Serbia. In Serbia, there are a group of volunteers that come together to help the refugees. These people might not see eye to eye, just like all of us. We are not the best of friends. We are Dharma family, but we might not see eye to eye and agree on everything. However, because of a greater need, that's the refugees. That's why people are willing to let go of their own insistence to work as a group. And that's what wisdom allows us to see. It allows us to see the greater self. It allows us to see something that is more important than how we think, how I think is important. That's wisdom. So wisdom is very important, because without it, if we all are thinking in our own way, no, it's time to be giving right now. Somebody said, no, it's time to practice samadhi. No, it's time to be diligent. No, it's time to... All of these things put together, no one would be agreeing to each other. Your effort would not be able to perpetuate. Your effort would stop. So you would need wisdom to continue on. So that's the importance of wisdom. And I think for us, we always know that there are things for us to learn. We are all at the same time a student and a teacher. There are always something that I can give to the community. And there are always something that I can get from the community. There's always something that I can teach the community. And there's always something that I can learn from the community. And the wisdom is knowing when you are the teacher and when you are the student. If everybody in the same room decided that they are all going to be students at the same time, then no one would be talking. No one would be teaching. And everybody would just be sitting there waiting to get instructions. If everybody in the room decides that they are going to be teachers at the same time, then no one will be listening. Everybody would be giving their thoughts, and no one would be getting anything from everybody else. And everything would just be stuck. So that's the importance of wisdom. And I think through this chapter, it brings out the importance of wisdom by putting a tag, a virtues or the merits tag on it, and say, that's how important it is, because it's worth so much more merit. But I wanted to not attach a merit tag onto it and say, this is important because it's worth a lot of merit. I rather wanted to look at it in terms of logic, in terms of, in a more scientific way, that why is important? Because it allows us to go on. It allows us to pick the right tools at the right time to do the right thing. That's wisdom. So briefly, we're going to go through the stories from this week. And there are some very important stories that Master talked about. The first one is the story of the Lord Buddha. And I thought it to be very, very interesting. And the reason why I want to bring it up is because I rarely hear this side of the story. I rarely hear this particular part about Lord Buddha. And the reason is because Master really dive into analyzing. It's almost like psychoanalyzing Lord Buddha. How Buddha, when he was a prince, how he thought, how he thinks, to make him want to renounce his life, the very wealthy life in the palace, and to be willing to continue on. But the biggest shock to me was, and this is not a shock that started this time. It's actually started many, many, many times, especially in the previous chapter, when we found out that the Buddha had already been enlightened for ages and ages and ages, for infinite ages. And the reason why it was shocked to me was, the story that was shocking was that Master said that the Buddha had already been coming back and back to all of us, perhaps in the form of sages, perhaps in the form of very well-respected scholar, someone who brought us values, morality, some of the very important virtues of the past. And these are the people, perhaps they are the manifestation of the Lord Buddha. And this has been happening all around us without us knowing. Buddha have been coming to us, slowly transforming all of us from time to time without us knowing. While that's something that I can believe, what really shocked me was this particular lifetime, 2,500 years ago, was very different. In that lifetime, he came to the world as a prince, Shakyamuni, and the prince himself, from his very young age, began to question many, many things. He had the wisdoms. He had the questions. He had the power to find the answers. But what was different about the lifetime was that the affinities and all the karma were ready. The seeds were ready, and it blossomed in that lifetime. So he, the Buddha, in that lifetime, chose to begin to preach the teachings, the Dharma, to all. So even though the Buddha had been coming back to us, to life, to our lives, all of this time, but they were never showing up as Buddhas, telling people, this is my teaching, this is the Dharma that should go on living, surviving through time. You need to learn this. So why did it change? What was different? And there was the accumulation of karma, the accumulation of all the things that's happened. And finally, this one great event that happened, the Lord Buddha became the enlightened one. It was already enlightened. That's why it kept on coming back to us. But in that life, he appeared. He chose to appear no longer as someone that we don't know as Buddha, but he chose to appear and began to be the Buddha that we know. So what I'm trying to share with all of you about the story was, this is just like what we talked about just right before, the 6 parameters. The Buddha was doing all the things that he can on the first 5 parameters, coming back to us, helping all of us. You know, maybe I'm feeling down. Somebody comes over, put a hand on my shoulder and say, don't worry, Joe, it will go over. Let me tell you a story. And after that, I'm fine. I get to go again, very positive. At that moment, that was my Buddha helping me. However, the hardest part, the most important part, isn't just to get me to go again, whether it was through giving or through a story of samadhi or through a story of diligence and effort. It was through the inspiration of wisdom. And that's the difference between the age of the Buddha and all the other time when he came back unknowingly to help us. And that's what I think what we should do. Yes, we should help people. Yes, we should practice samadhi. We should be diligent. We should always be giving. We should always be doing all the things to benefit others. But the things that benefit the most to all other people, more than other things that we actually give, is the inspiration of that wisdom of the people. To inspire the wisdom from within, to help them see the things that they already could see, but they chose not to see. That's what the Buddha did to us when he began preaching 2,500 years ago. And I think that is the most important part. So through this story of the Buddha, it really made me feel that when the conditions are ripe, the most important thing is not just to help others, but to inspire that wisdom from within others. We might still be afflicted, but we have the power to inspire that wisdom from others. And when that moment came, that person with the inspired wisdom, they will be able to practice the first 5 parameters without you helping, because you've already helped them inspire the 6th, the wisdom. So that's why I think wisdom is important. It's not just about us, myself, getting over my own obstacles, helping myself to perpetuate the effort, but also that's the key. You could do all the things you can to help the other people. But if you do not hold the key to open the door to their wisdom, then you could be helping all you want, but not really helping this person. But rather, if you can hold the key, if you can use that key and inspire that wisdom from the others, then you will help them unlock all that there is that they could do to help themselves. And I think that is why this action, this parameter, has the biggest and the most important merit and virtue of all. So thank you. That's my sharing for today.
Okay, Brother Chris.
Good morning, everyone. Amitofo. Good morning to beloved Sifu. Brother Joe, and brothers and sisters. I'm very nervous, as you can hear my voice, but there's quite a few incidents that happened in the past 6 months that has disrupted my life, and there's a lot of, upon reflection, I've got some realizations and a lot of lessons learned. At one stage, I was a little bit slacking in attending the Simpasiang. I tried to attend every day, and at one period I was slacking out. So one night I had the dream about getting on a bus. I was trying to get on the bus, and the bus just sped off, and I was barely hanging on to the handle of the door, and I was looking at the other passengers and seeing whether somebody can help me, but they're all looking straight forward, and there was nobody responded to my so-called appeal for help, and the bus was just continuing to pick up speed, and I was just hanging on. Then I woke up. So I thought about it, and I say, well, I can't slack off from Simpasiang. This is already a sign or warning to me that if I'm not on the bus, then I'll be left behind. So I had so I went back to my usual attendance, regular attendance at the Simpasiang. Another incident that also jolted me a lot was that I was in a snatch thief incident. I was holding a sling bag, and this snatch thief on a motorbike just came along and just pulled the bag off my shoulder, but at the same time I fell down on the road. The road surface was very rough. It's a tar road, and when I fell, I stopped. I fell forward, but I break my fall with my arm. So when I was dragged, my arm suffered quite a long tear, right? And it took many stitches. But the thing is that when I reflected on it, is this a good happening or a bad one? I think it depends on how we look at it. I had thought about this incident over the 2-3 weeks of recovery period. I need to change my bandage every day, and it really disrupted my life. But thinking back, what do I learn from it? Actually, when I bought that nice leather bag, it was at a sale, and was, instead of buying that usual bag, I was saying, since I can afford it, I'll get a nicer one. So I think with that type of deviated thoughts, this brings up, subsequent retribution. So instead of thinking simple, functional, I have deviated and gone into arrogance and greed, which is very basic thing, but it comes up like that. So when the snatch thief saw me, I don't know whether he wants the bag or he thinks there are some valuables in that nice looking leather bag. So when conditions ripen like that, incident happen. But unfortunately, I don't know. I was thinking if this seller had looked for money in my bag, he would have been disappointed because there's no money at all in the bag. The money was in my pocket. My handphone was in my pocket. So in the bag were just some documents and my checkbooks, which is of no use to him. So I was thinking, should I have leave some money in there, for people like him, so that if he's looking for money, that money satisfy him for a while and he doesn't have the urge because there's no money in the bag and he is not wanting the bag, he's looking for money. That would prevent him from immediately looking for another victim, right? And cause suffering to the next person. So, so I realized that, all these so-called little decisions can have so much effect, both on ourselves and others. My own desire, right, has created a desire in the snatch thief. So if I have made the right decision and chosen a bag that there's nobody takes notice of, maybe this may not have happened. I don't know. Then just in February during the Chinese New Year period, I was on holiday in Melbourne, and I was going from Melbourne to Hobart to see my elder sister there. I haven't seen her for some time, and when we reached the airport at Hobart, my wife got a call to say that her mother passed away. There's not much I can do. I can only offer her the shoulder to cry on. And she has always been very attached to her mother, and she will take every opportunity to see her mother, and travel 300 kilometers or 600 kilometers to and fro, just to see her. And 2 days before our flight to Melbourne, she still insists to go back and see her mother, even though we have not done any packing or prepared for the trip. No, as she was crying on my shoulder, I don't know what to say. I was thinking to say, well, you have done a lot for your mom. Even 2 days before this trip, you had gone to see her. But luckily, I shut my mouth and I just comfort her as best as I can. Now, because there's only 2 of us at home, all my children are in Australia, I find that because of a mother passed away, and she has changed. She has changed, but she looks very brave and normal outside. But I can feel that she is going through a lot inside. But I don't have the wisdom to or experience to help her. But I hope that other brothers or sisters who have similar experience may be able to comfort her better than me. This incident also, as an outsider, I can see how much is affected the relationship between the siblings and also the relatives, and you can see clearly how each one of them react to the situation, and you can see the best and worst of them, especially when the will is revealed. Anyway, these few incidents have made me think a lot that there's still so much Dharma to be learned, so much cultivation to do, and the road is so far, but thinking back with the snatchtive incident, if I was not in Tzu Chi, I would have been ranting and complaining and shouting and screaming, but I didn't do any of that. So I have actually changed and learned something during my few years in Tzu Chi, but that is not enough. On a happy note, I've been asked to be the coordinator for this English group book study, and which we will launch on the 2nd of April, with Brother Lu being the first session facilitator. And the book that I've chosen to share is The Path to Truth. When I was doing a little bit of research, I remember that when I first joined Tzu Chi in 2009, that the number of English books is very few on the shelves in Ching's Cafe, and it is about probably a book comes out every 2 years or so. But now I've got a list of 18 books which have been published and printed in the past 5 years. There has been a change, and Brother Joe, you may like to share with me that from what I know, the English books, the translation and the publishing was previously done from the US. Later on, there was a Hualien, and now I'm not sure what the situation, but whatever it is, canon to the translators, the editors, and also for being so diligent in coming out with so many books in the past couple of years. I hope that this book study can pick up speed, because I try to be a little bit ambitious and say that I have 2 book studies a month, but I was told to cool it down and be more realistic and do it once a month. But I still see whether I have an opportunity to make it a bit more often, and because these books are really must-read books. Kandan everyone.
Kandan to Brother Chris. Today is a good day and also the right day to do the sharing from Brother Chris. Okay, I pass the.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make this short. Thank you, Brother Chris. It's a very it's thank you so much for your wonderful and very heartwarming. Well, I'm sorry to hear about the passing, but like you said, it's all about choosing the right words to say at the right moment. So just like the story that Master shared with us last week, when there was a town and the people there don't quite seem and so keen to accept the Buddhist teaching, and there were many of the disciples, including Shariputra, that had actually gone there and tried, and all failed. And I really think of this as, you know, it's not how well learned someone is, but it's also the affinity to know and to do the right things. So my deepest condolences, and at the same time, I'm sure a lot of it will come at the right affinity if we just keep at it. And about your bag that was snatched, you know, I think you're on the right track. You know, you began to, for many people, I don't think they would be thinking back to the day where they bought it, and you did. I think that reminds me of our Buddha, Lord Buddha, when he was always questioning why. And the Four Noble Truths began with the word of suffering, but then it's next continue to try to find the origin of the suffering. And I think that's very important, is how you contemplate it. And you took us back in the journey and to see that why did you buy it? And what did you think it was? And then you even go further and think about what was in it. And you thought about perhaps putting some money in there. And I think all of that is self-contemplation, which allow us to go forward and allow us to see the affinities or the afflictions that every action has. And then hopefully give us a chance to be wiser. So thank you for your sharing, and the best of wish and best of luck to the book study. And of course, about the translation. Yes, it was done by. I think still a lot of translation is still being done by the U.S. team, and so yes, there will be a lot of deepest gratitude to all the U.S. team to help. And they're very good at it. They're very, very good at it. They work very hard, actually, to try to come up with the right translation. As you all know, knowing a few languages, speak a few languages ourselves, you know, sometimes it's just so hard to find the right way to express. Maybe because sometimes there isn't the right way to express something that can't be expressed. Yet you still need to put that into print. So that's hard. So thank you, Brother Chris. And welcome back to the bus. And we hear your appeal for help. We just couldn't do anything. You have to be the one to break it through yourself. We hear the appeal. We just all tend to look away because we don't know how to help. But you pull through, and that's the most important thing. So welcome back to the bus. And let's hope that when anybody falls off, let's help them in any way that we can to encourage, and also to encourage one another and ourselves to continue to Xun Fa Xiang and find the joy of the Dharma within. So thank you. Yes. Okay, so I am looking at the questions, and sorry I didn't put that into the PowerPoint slides, but let me go on to question number 2, and let me read that. I'm sorry, I apologize again for not putting it into the slide. The question 2 reads, the 4 additional efforts or the 四加行 that Master spoke of on the 12th and 13th of March. Can you please elaborate? Yes, I think this is what I share about the idea that whether you are part of the minor or the small or the large vehicle, doesn't matter what path you take. You could be part of the hearers or the solitary realizers, or you could be on the Bodhisattva path. There's always something that's associated to it, and that's called the 4 additional efforts. And these are the efforts on top of the normal and the regular teachings of the school you put onto yourself in terms of the frame, your mindset. For example, in the Mahayana, then we're talking about the 4 encompassing vows. And Master talked about, other than these 4 vows, we should always to have these 4 additional efforts. Why? Because there might be one day where you think that you have done wonderfully, where you have thought, hey, I have done all that I can to help all the people and all the sentient beings around us. Let's take being a vegetarian for example. Before, you might not be a vegetarian, and after much effort, you began to try the diet and you began to like it. And after a while, it becomes a habit. It becomes something that you do all the time. So for that, in terms of being a vegetarian, you have gone from being someone who is opposed to it, to someone who accepts it, to someone who practices it, to someone who believes it. And furthermore, you really enjoy it. You've been vegetarian all this time for the past 10 years, and you really enjoy it. Now, does that mean that on this path of being a vegetarian, you are stopped? You have reached the top, and therefore you're at the apex, the peak, and there's nothing for you to do? And the answer is no, there's more. Don't stop there just because you think you've overcome your obstacles. You have done something great to accomplish something, but don't stop. There's always something you can do more. And what is that more? The idea is that you could do more in, how about spreading the idea of vegetarianism? How about making others also feel the same way that you feel about vegetarian? It's the same idea that you can always do more. So that's what 4 additional efforts are. It's to tell us. So as I started out sharing, this chapter is about telling us that there are many steps in terms of cultivation. Even when you reach the topmost step, you don't end there. You continue finding that there is something more for us to do. It's a never-ending and non-stop journey to reach Buddhahood. And even after you reach Buddhahood, you don't stop, because there are all the sentient beings for us to help. And it doesn't stop from there. So that's why it's called the 4 additional efforts. It doesn't stop. It will always continue. One day you feel like, oh, I've gone to all the Xun Fa Xiang. I copied down all the notes. I did all my review. Everything in there, I've done all of them. So I'm done. Let me take a break today. No, it doesn't happen that way. Because the more that you do, the more that there's going to be additional efforts that we need to put in. So that's what the 4 additional efforts mean. On question 3, it's very short and it's very simple. I'll try to keep my answer short and simple as well. Question 3 says, how to get closer to Master. It's the question that everybody's been asking. Everybody wanted to ask, but probably don't dare to ask. But I really feel that, just like what Master says, love her by loving the people that she loves. So if you want to get closer to Master, get closer to the things that Master is closer to. And that, I believe, has always been the Sutra of Infinite Meanings. The one thing that we can do now, today, ourselves, is to get closer to the Sutra, to understand the Sutra, to practice, to see and perhaps even memorize, to make the Sutra into the embodiment of our lives, to make the Sutra the center core of our belief, to make the Sutra an everyday part of our lives. When we wake up, we think about it. When we go to bed, before we go to bed, we perhaps chant one of the verses or something, but make this Sutra part of us. When this Sutra becomes part of us, then Master will be closer to the Master. And that's just how simple it is. Loving Master by love the people that she loves. Get close to the Master by getting close to the very, very Sutra that she holds dear and close to herself. And that's a very simple answer that we can all do today. So it's not about by becoming the CEO of Malaysia chapter. That might not be closer than where you are today. Yeah, you might be physically closer, but are you really spiritually closer? And by being closer to the Sutra of Infinite Meanings, you are actually physically as well as spiritually closer to Master. Okay, so question 4, and I have about a minute left. The verses from chapter 17 talks about the 4 directions, the 4 continents. And the question asked about if we can help to explain on the 4 continents. Seems like Master explained the direction of Mount Sumeru. Yes, the reason for using Mount Sumeru. So very quick. I am not big on geography. In fact, I'm very bad at it. I hardly know where Malaysia is. I apologize. But I hardly know where Malaysia and Indonesia is. I'm very bad with geography. So when the sutra goes to cover about geography, I try to turn it off. I try to imagine what the meaning behind the 4 continents are. And essentially, it's just, Mount Sumeru at the middle, and there's something to the east, to the north, to the west, to the south, the 4 directions. And to me, it really feels like it's trying to tell us in a greater scope of the world, it's just like our inner world. There's always us at the center, and there's always things around us, to the north, to the south, to the east, to the west. And that's it. Everything is always centered with us and something next to us. And what this verse is trying to say is that out of all these worlds, out of you, your center, and all the 4 corners around you, and my center and my corners around me, and all the other dust-like individuals, their center and all the 4 corners around them, that's going to make up into a very, very, very big and expansive universe. And that universe, however big it is, and however number of people or bodhisattva or cultivators or practitioners there are, they're all practicing something. That's what the verse is trying to say. It's trying to gives you a perspective that there are many people like us, individual in the center, 4 corners all around us. We all have something that we have to think about. Me in the center, my life in the my work in the front, my volunteer to the left, my relatives to the right, and my knowledge and wisdom in my back. So everybody's got 4 of their corners in their lives. And this is just to tell people, as an analogy, that everyone, while they all have their 4 burdens or 4 corners, something that they do will not change. And that's practicing spiritual practice or spiritual cultivation. So that's my take on it. It's not the dictionary definition of the 4 continents, which I really, really think it's trying to paint a picture. But to me, there's always something more than that. And that's how I explain how the 4 continents really meant. So thank you all for coming on today for our weekly review. And I hope this has been another something that inspire you to learn more. No, what I say isn't always the only or the only right answer. Sometimes it might not even be right, as I've known in the past to be making mistakes too. So, but the most important thing is, do you feel that your wisdom, or do you feel that your thirst for wisdom has been inspired from this? Did Joe say something that triggered something that make me want to learn more? That's what we need. It's always to find that edge and find the motivation to get us to learn more, to understand. So thank you so much that this is how we can function as a group, to learn from each other, to hear, and then to provide feedback. And that would be our food, the food that we need to continue sustaining our life of wisdom. Thank you all, and so happy to always be on a weekly basis to be able to connect with you all, especially with Brother Chris, and wonderful sharing for today. Thank you. And if there's nothing else, then Sister Chachin, please take over. And once again, thank you.
Brothers and sisters, Brother Joe. Just now you mentioned that how to love Master more and be closer to. Can I ask whether if let's say if we were to serve more, to serve the poor, the sick, and the marginalized, if we were to serve more, does that mean that we resonate closer to her heart, her mind, and we are actually loving her more? Can I say like that?
Absolutely. But remember, serving more is important, but also you need the wisdom, okay? Wisdom of knowing why you're doing this. You're not doing this so that you can love Master more. You're doing this, but also to inspire the wisdom from others, not just to give them something that's material, not just, it's important to give them, but not just that, but also to give them something that's more spiritual as well, and knowing the right time to do the right things, to give them the right wisdom, to inspire their right wisdom. And if you can do that, then of course, all of that. So what I said about the Sutra of Infinite Meanings is exactly just that, because the Sutra is talking about serving, but understanding, observing, knowing what they need, and giving what they need. That's what the Sutra is talking about. So that will definitely help with getting closer to Master. Thank you for bringing up that wonderful suggestion. Thank you.